I will go ahead and talk about our quick company overview. So we are doing very niche. We supply unique methanol parts to OEM, so original equipment manufacturers. We don't actually do retail unless it's for very selective clientele, like the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore, who is one of our clients. Our goal is actually we are an independent service provider and development partner for OEMs. And the likes of our scope would be, sending engineers in terms of co-identifying particular engine models within the OEM's portfolio, which they feel there's a market for alcohol-based engine modification. And then from then we typically would go into a joint development agreement and ultimately have an MOU or LOI signed to have committed money from these OEMs, or because they would have R&D projects, so committed budget within their R&D program to co-develop a diesel engine of their choice to run methanol. And so our applications are actually not only limited to automotive, but it's actually the largest EBITDA contributor for our company, because the marine engines are not as well, how should we put it, not as well used, because a lot of vessels, they only sail for perhaps 6 hours, 7 hours. The rest of the time they're docking. So compared to automotive, where they're running every day, they clock 100,000 kilometers. That's for a medium haul, or even up to 200,000 kilometers, 300,000. They would really enjoy the fuel cost savings from the use of alcohol-based fuel as compared to fossil fuel. Yeah, so our expertise really is about identifying a particular engine model from the OEM, and then from then on, we package our plug-and-play injection system onto the engine archetype, and the goal obviously is with as minimal modifications as needed to ensure this new methanol engine is operationally similar or even better than the existing diesel engine. And there will be technology transfer. It depends on the commercial terms that's been discussed, or exclusivity, in terms of geography or time-wise, or a particular, engine range of the OEM. So we have a lot of patents, which is very interesting, because you notice the increasing trend is most of the large auto companies like, Daimler, or like the likes of Volvo or Scania, they actually don't really do a lot of R&D now. They like to outsource it to independent players, and their core strengths are retained in actually the distribution network, the dealerships they have, the distribution, and so it gives us a role as an independent service and development partner. It gives us a void that we can fill in. Yeah, so this is really the core gist, and we effectively package this systems now. So all of this we have 3 patents filed, and they are centered on our injectors, the whole fuel control system, and thirdly the common rail injection. So if you are familiar with engines, traditionally engines are mechanically galvanized. And now everything is electrically controlled, because it really allows for microsecond injection, which translates to fuel economics and savings, and also benefits in terms of the emissions reduction. So yeah, so we package this whole biofuel system and engage with OEM on this basis. First on a product development side, and finally with on a commercial term to supply them these parts. And our target engine ranges are about 110 to 140. So far our experience are most comfortable within this range. But of course, we have also have clientele who come up with larger bore sizes engines. And ultimately, if the OEMs are ready to pay for the upfront fees, we're also happy to look at. But our current track record and most experienced playing field is in the 110 to 140 bore sizes. Yeah, so some of our core markets, we are a regional player, but we have also been active in China, who is one of the largest consumer of methanol. And in Europe, we have Germany as well as Italy. They all come under very strict EU regulations that, for example, in terms of CO2, for fleet of cars to be even on the road, it needs to be reduced by 15% versus this conventional trucks, conventional fuels. And from 2030, the reductions become up to 30%. And again, I also want to emphasize here that it's not that the biofuel method is the only solution. It's one of the solutions, because ultimately the pie is to replace diesel. So we will coexist for sure with plug-in hybrids, with electrification, with hydrogen fuel cells. Every kind of solutions, each of them, they have their merits, and they are suitable. For example, in the case of biofuel, we are suitable for heavy duty, as I say, 100,000 to 300,000 kilometer mileage truck. And in terms of electrification or hybrids, they are better suited for cars that fly within intracity or intercity. So when we go to these car markets, our niche is playing in the medium haul to long haul commercial vehicle space, and obviously selective near inland shipping vessels as well. Yeah, so we have our biggest experience. Actually, we're actually technically not a startup. I mean, the company has gone through, should we say, dynastic changes, because it used to be a holding company for our shipbuilding business, for the family shipbuilding business in China. And at the turn of the century, in about 2001, opportunity came about because they were increasing clampdown on emissions, and we look at how we could improve emissions of the vessels we built. And soon we were doing it for client, and but our field was pretty much concentrated in marine, and that's why it was a good fit when we came across the Maritime Port Authority of Singapore, because they are keen to clean up our harbors and to ensure that Singapore remains as a very competitive port, and having choices, clean bunker fuel choices for vessels that dock here for replenishment, for transshipment, as cargo handling, etc. So that's one of the government organization, and there's also Enterprise Singapore, who is especially taking care of SMEs like ourselves, small medium enterprises, and within that there is the MRA grant, which helps companies to go overseas. And then there's the EDG grant, which is the light blue on the right side. It helps company to shall we say, to increase their capability, whether it's product development or meeting certain HCAP or meeting ISO standards, etc. And MDA, I understand, is for the Media Development Authority, so they are more into things that is with respect to IT related, like helping with point of sales, or like ERP, and enterprise resource planning, things of that sort. And at NRF, the National Research Foundation, we personally don't deal with them, but we hear they are very big on funding things on also like green technology, how to solutions to make renewable CO2, or renewable biofuels or electric fuels, etc. Yeah. Of course, then after government, then you have the the private sources. So we don't actually have any credit lines. Our company is all equity holder funded, and now that we have our own business, obviously we generate internal accruals to fund the business. And then of course you have family and friends as well. We thought it would be relevant for people who have who have large pool of family offices or have deep pockets, family and friends. Yeah, so we have, as we said, we work with EDG because it supports SME, and the usual steps to look at is to see first if you even fit the criteria, because you have to have local ownership as well as have a site, have a domiciled office in Singapore. It need not be a commercial space. It could be just a residential space, and it has and it has also got to have one secretary who is a Singapore PR or Singapore citizen. And then we go on, we have to probably look at, is your sector within the sweet spot, so to speak? There are some sectors that the government likes, like we said, like clean, renewable, or fintech. Or now because of COVID, I think it's a good opportunity. I've noticed they have enlarged the prospects that they will support, or the likes of F&B, or even retail as well. So that there's actually a full checklist on the EDG website that allows you to, go through, scan through and see if you fulfill them. And then we move on, we need to look at partners. Ideally, they always say, oh, we like you to work with a local institute of higher education. So in our project, we used to work with SIT, which Zhen was at, and then we work with Neon Poly, as well as NTU. So these partners actually, they may not necessarily have a lot of commercial experience, but they do come in and help to run a lot of simulations in our case, and to run some projection models that could benefit us when we are doing validation work during the experiments. And then prepare proposals. There's a lot of templates, or if need be templates I can help to provide. You could write to me through Chen.
Oh, that's for me.
Yeah, and then we prepare the Aqua. Aqua, it's very it's a local, basically like a company registration document. And then you need to have certified accounts for the last 3 years. Sometimes they say last fiscal year, but usually I say it's good to prepare last 3 years if you have them. If you don't, whichever is the most recent. And then proof of quotation of the expected vendor cost, etc. And then and then you submit things online. It's all done virtually now. And then an officer will be assigned to you. An officer will be assigned, and if you already have a contact at EDG, it's always good to actually give a heads up to the EDG officer who looks after your account. But if not, you could just send the application, and then they would have a point person for you to follow up with.
Okay.
Yeah. So we looked at, as I said, the certain from my personal experience that I have benefited from, I would share. And that's the likes of convertible debt, whereby you could be raised privately or publicly. But the thing is, if and when the strike price is it's already a strike price, you would have the debt holders could convert into equity. Your share could be diluted, but at the same time, it also means you could improve your valuation of your company. If you have already in a proof of value stage rather than just a proof of concept, maybe you will look at that, because a grant, effectively, it's not really like, it doesn't put a price tag on your business. It is just an outright support. The benefit is you don't have to pay it back. You don't have to worry about equity dilution. But at the same time, then you don't really get a valuation prescribed to your company. And in the case of a grant, usually it's on a reimbursement basis. So you actually have to have the capital line. You have to put in the money first, and then the government will, review the invoices and supporting documents and see if they would reimburse you for. It depends on different grants. Like some grants are at 50% reimbursement, some are at 70%. But the reimbursement process is usually quite arduous and labor intensive, and there's a time lag. So this is versus if you had it through an investor, then it will be outright a capital injection or a outright loan. So it depends on and which stage of your, I guess, product development cycle, and your the excess of the capital you have at your disposal. And then cash flow and funding tranches, we know of, like, you have in terms of grant is very simple. It is typically just outright reimbursement. You pay first and you have it covered. In the case of fundraising, then you have maybe a Series A or Series B, and at each stage of the funding tranches, you could even improve your valuation. A lot of startups have funding broken up into different rounds, because then it helps them to unlock value of their company rather than putting a price tag offhand. Because as the product develops, the different maturity will render different valuation. So people like to have funding tranched up, and each tranche obviously will push up the valuation further. But at the same time, the older investors will also suffer a dilution. So more often than not, I guess the old investors will also participate in upcoming funding, so to ensure that equity is kept at their preferred level. So I'll group together dilution, control direction, and fund commitment. It's again kind of a, shall we say, cost and benefit. At the same time, you want to have that certainty of cash flow, the funding commitment. But you also suffer from dilution, and also you have to relinquish some control. So some of the investors, in the case of the grant, is very easy. They have no say in how you run your project, but you have to fork out the capital first. And in the case of a private or public investors, they'll expect to probably have some management seats that would give them say, maybe 2 out of 10, depending on how you would want to structure your funding deal with them. So there's a cost and benefit. So I mean, for our company, because we actually we are quite financially solid. So when the project was during the gestation of our project, we always knew we could rely on capital injection, capital raising privately on our own. So the government grant was really complementary. But if in certain other cases, you may not have that luxury, then you would look at, striking how to strike a balance between sourcing for fund, and, having at the same time having your control and having a say in how you want the direction of the company to go and where you want to bring it to. And then, you have the own route, the last 4 points: supporting yourself, matching grants, and support for other aspects of your business. It really depends on what's the burn rate that you have. So if you have a runway rate of 3 years and you have that amount of money, it's how much are you looking at investing? Depending on the stage of your product development, if you're probably at maybe a TRL 2, you will want to ensure that you have enough funding to see yourself through at least till 8. I'm not sure. Do you guys understand the concept of TRL, like technology readiness level? Yeah, I think to have any meaningful engagement with whether it's the government grant or with private public investors, we're looking at least a TRL 7. So if you're looking at supporting yourself for the time being, I think you have to see yourself through at least to TRL7 to be able to interface on a meaningful basis for access to financing. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so that's it. We really kept it short and sweet and wanted to keep this fluid. If there were questions, yeah.
Yes, okay,
Fire
thanks very
away.
much, May. Thanks very much for your
Is it
sharing.
help? I hope it's helpful.
I think
Yeah.
this is quite helpful with your proven experience in business and also in business planning. I guess you are more experienced than most of us because we are most of us. I think I just mainly focusing on the technical part, but why we invite you to here is we all of us have some interest to start a business or already have started a business, but
Yep.
we have no idea. I mean, how to take off. So I think it's quite your talk is quite interesting and
Yep.
meaningful for us. So, any questions, everybody?
Hi, I would like to
Hi,
ask a question. So first of all, thanks a lot for this very nice talk. I'm sorry if what I ask will be a bit repetitive, but I just missed the very beginning of your presentation. I'm interested like in the engines itself. So does these engines work like with a pure methanol feed, or is it methanol mixed in certain quantities with something else, and how sensitive they are to impurities which can be encountered in methanol?
Yeah, actually, it's a very good question. Thank you. Basically, our system is on a pilot injection, diesel injection, and so at the start you will need, because methanol cetane number. Actually, Zhen is also an expert. Is about it's on the low side compared to a fossil based fuel. So we need a pilot diesel injection. But once it starts running through, um, uh, it's completely on methanol basis. So the average number that we're looking at is across average of different loading. It should be at least a 95% methanol with a 5% diesel, which really is the 100% right at the start to kickstart the combustion.
Okay, I see.
And your other question, you have one more. Sorry, the second part of your question.
Yeah, the second was about impurities. So because
Yes.
methanol can be produced within many routes, and among them also biological routes, which will result in small amount of impurities, such as, for example, different sulfuric compounds and so on. And
Yeah.
I'm very curious on the technical side of the engine, how sensitive it is to such components.
Yeah, actually, we have in the the fuel system our high nano filter. So it's to block out, but of course it's not foolproof. It depends on how well the user change, because the advice is to actually change every 5,000 hours to change the filter, but some users just do it every 10,000 hours to save cost, for obvious reasons. And the benefit is that I think methanol is actually the methanol we talk of. Actually, anyway, they're mostly not 100% pure, and so it could sustain impurities up to a certain threshold. But let's say beyond 10,000 hours and you don't change, you would have blockage. It's just like your heart. The heart, the arteries are blocked. Heart supply to your heart is restrained, and it's effectively the same thing. The engine will bound to have more heat loss and lower power output. So we are hoping that our users, they are more religious about or there could be some wiggle room, but not so much wiggle room, and they keep to a 5,000 hour maintenance plan.
Okay, I see. That's excellent. And actually, these filters, can they be regenerated after this 5,000 hours, or they just have to dispose them and install a new one?
Yeah, so they're usually just disposed. These are like one-time use, similarly to your car filters. Yeah, or aircon filters in a private passenger car.
Okay, I see. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Magda.
Magda is neon CO2 recycling. Maybe in future we can produce methanol from CO2 with high purity. That will be close the whole cycle.
Yeah, actually, methanol is not that difficult to produce from
From
CO2.
CO2, yes, it's true. It's
That's why it's excellent.
technically, I think it's viable actually. Yes.
Yeah.
And the purity should be higher than other method, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know of the company in the CRI International that does recycling in Reykjavik in Iceland. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we understand that the unit cost is very high compared to natural gas based methanol.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. However, we hope that like with the scale up of these electrochemical processes, the cost of the stack might gradually start to decrease. Because now this really the key problem in the deployment of this technology.
Yeah.
This stack it's costly and also it degrades over time. So it's difficult to directly compete with a normal petrochemical process.
Yeah. So if there was a bigger scale, would the unit cost actually come down? Do you think it will ever converge to be similar to petrochemical based methanol, or it's difficult?
Yeah, I think it's possible. The only thing that we really need is also cheap sources of electric energy, because these processes are mainly fed with electric energy. So the reason why they do it in Iceland is that they have a lot of this geothermal power. So they use very cheap energy, and also importantly, CO2 free. Because if we emit a lot of CO2 while producing the energy, then this methanol it doesn't really make sense.
It's not carbon neutral. Yeah, the well to wheels doesn't make it attractive.
Yeah. So the key problem that we see here, that even though this technology could be competitive, as you just said, at this point the cost of this electrochemical stack is very high. So we are searching for some kind of niche applications where we could provide some benefit to the processes while using a smaller stack, so having a smaller investment cost, and then gradually accumulate experience, which would enable us in future to have bigger stacks at the lower price.
Oh, got you.
This is what we're working on.
Right.
Yeah. It would be very, I guess that would be very flexible. And another possibility would be in some remote area like the desert, there's not much thing you can do. That you can actually build a lot of wind mine to harvest the electricity. But the problem is you cannot transfer. I mean to ship to use the electricity there, because usually it's far from the other cities. But one way is you can use this kind of electricity to convert CO2 to other chemicals like methanol, then like to harvest the energy from wind and the stored energy into methanol.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's also in very selective geographies like geothermal, wind power, and in deserts. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So any other questions? We only have a few people today. Maybe I have one question, May. It's very, very nice to see you here. I hope we can see each other in person recently.
Definitely, yeah.
To discuss more.
Actually,
just now you mentioned that actually you found that the big companies, they actually happy to outsource some technical problems to small companies.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I just wondering how did you normally how did you get the link to these big companies? And normally it's challenge for a small company to establish any connections to bigger guys.
Yeah, so actually we have now a marketing, I guess a business development team that does especially only 2 people, and they were both one is an ex I'm not sure if you know the company Continental. So he used to supply already to big companies. So he kind of worked with us first on a consultant basis 2 years ago, and now he's a full-time staff.
Oh.
So I think the inroad would be to hire someone that already has a track record. He has already access to the network you would like to have we like to have gain an entry into, and having someone that's already in the industry to bring you in. But of course, ultimately, our product have to speak for themselves.
Yes.
Because if he only opens the door, but both of them actually they are internal combustion engineers by training themselves. So I think they straddle with a good door open. They help to open door, and at the same time, once we go in, they help to make sure all the technical liaisons are to the satisfaction of the client, of the big guys.
Yes. Okay, that's good to know. Oh, it's great. Now your company already got 30 people, 32 people already.
Yeah.
It's growth.
So but it's 6 people in Singapore and 24 in China.
Okay.
Yeah, because we actually have a lot of methanol. Because China is one of the, I would say, pioneers in methanol engines.
Yeah. Because they have a lot of coals. They can just lower cost to methanol. Methanol will be very cheap.
Yeah, and also the timing is right now because most companies cannot afford electrification.
Oh.
Because electrification is for certain companies. As I said, every company has a solution for them. So our plug and play comes in also as a solution. So we are all looking at replacing diesel so that the pie is big enough for all alternatives to survive.
Okay, great. Okay, any other questions, guys? If no more, that's all for today. Thanks very much, May, for your time.